Okay. My name's Jillian. I'm going to be moderating this session. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Z for the rest of the session today. This is session 201, the student research presentations. This is ASSP student sections of IUP and Slippery Rock. We ask that you stay muted through the presentation today, and if you have any questions, just put them in the chat, and I will turn it over to Dr. Z.
Hello all, good morning. Thank you all for being here to support our student research, and I also want to thank our student for presenting the research from Slippery Rock and IUP. As Julian said, please write your questions in the chat or wait until the student is done with or her session. Student, please stick with the 5 minutes limit to allow as many students as possible to present. And without any further delay, we're going to start with Cindy Midford. She's a PhD student from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, IUP, and she is going to talk about an investigation of worker safety perceptions and influencing factors on marijuana use. Cindy?
Thank you, Dr. Z. I'm also on faculty at Slippery Rock University and a doctoral student at IUP, like Dr. Z said. So my study, we all know what the changing landscape of marijuana. We're experiencing it with state legislation. The MORE Act is getting reviewed at the Senate level this week. It's been constant change. Public opinion has changed a lot in the last 10 years. The significance of this study, I think right now, is that the legal accessibility of marijuana has increased, and several studies are out there saying that there's increased use of marijuana during the pandemic. So one of the things that I want to convince people of is that worker safety perceptions are important, and they're related out there in several studies to job satisfaction, employee engagement, turnover, productivity, safety behaviors, and if we all know if we impact safety behaviors, we can impact safety rates. So it's important. And so trying to help the employer navigate the legal landscape, it brings me to my purpose and the background of the study. So to help us with the problem of all of this accessibility and some of the problems out there of detection versus impairment, employers need a little bit of data to make some decisions on their programs. And that's really the purpose, is to try to be helpful to safety professionals and employers as they're making decisions about their policies. I'm doing it through 14 research questions and 8 hypotheses. So we don't really have time to get into the literature review here, so I'll just move on to the study. Yep, so 14 research questions, 8 hypotheses. The analysis I'll be doing is really just descriptive statistics. There'll be some inferential statistics, including the chi-square for association or independence, as I'm testing out my hypotheses. I'm looking at age, the level of the employee, meaning, are they a safety professional? Are they a supervisor, a manager, or an employee? And I'm looking at those. I'm looking at union status. I'm looking at safety sensitive versus non-safety sensitive. And probably what I'm learning is the most ambitious was by industry sector, an ambitious dozen or more industry sectors that I'll be looking at. So the survey is 23 questions in and of itself. I'm using Qualtrics. It's a 4-point Likert scale. There's 5 questions of demographics and 18 worker safety perceptions. Currently, I'm in data collection, so this is my opportunity to beg you to participate. I am collecting data through April 15th. So the data collection so far has been really strong. As of this morning, as of these slides, we're just this weekend, but this morning I have 708 surveys in. But I'm trying to move the needle. You see the 193, that is the promised land of what I need to do all of the analysis across industry. I still need 5 more employees to get there, and I could use more supervisors as well. If you would like to drop your email in the chat for a proper invitation to take my survey, please do that. This is one of the attachment that you'll get. It's on social media. If you find me on LinkedIn, it's there. And I appreciate that the Western Pennsylvania chapter put it on their website as well. So thanks to everybody that's participated in my survey, and especially to my committee. Dr. Wachter is my chair, Dr. Marin, and Dr. Zerkleib.
Thank you, Cindy. Any questions? Okay. Then we're going to move to the robotics in factories by Chase Hoffman and Idea Canterbury.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Chase Hoffman. I'm a senior safety management major here at Slippery Rock University, and my partner, who was unable to make it this morning, Isaiah Canterbury. We're working on research, preliminary research in our class. And our research is basically robotics in factories. So for our research questions and hypothesis, our hypothesis is robots can help production greatly and can help lower injury rates in the manufacturing industry. So we're basically trying to figure out if that's true or not. Our research questions are: how does the manufacturing industry work with versus without robots? How can robots help prevent injury at work? What are the statistics on lost time and money because of workplace injury? What is the projected cost of robots and how will they affect payroll? And how ergonomics are in the manufacturing industry. For our lit review and theory, we have found that implementing robots into the manufacturing industry can really help production rates among companies, and injury rates are lowered with the implementation of robots. And the questions that still remain are: what are the injury rates in the workplace that are caused by robots? And could robots eventually replace humans completely in the manufacturing industry? That's more or less of a slippery slope kind of thing. You know, is that ethical or not? Is replacing humans with robots, you know, is that okay to do? And we're kind of trying to figure out if that's the case or not. For our methods and data collection, we have compared injury and production statistics between workplaces that have implemented robots versus workplaces that have not. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 2020, Pennsylvania scored at a 2.0 for injury rates in the manufacturing industry. And a case study has been done on the implementation of robots to the assembly process of the manufacturing industry. The case study talks about how quantitative decision-making is used to improve production rates. And at the bottom there, that's the site for the case study. And for our conclusion, lowering injury rates by implementing robots into the manufacturing industry can help production rates due to having less lost time injuries. The type of injuries that can be reduced are ergonomic injuries, falls from high levels, worker fatigue, and machine guarding injuries are reduced with the implementation of robots. And the best practices for workplace robots are lockout, tagout, communication, implementation, distributing awareness, and making learning a goal. And lastly, here is my contact information. Like I said, my name is Chase Hoffman. I'm a senior safety management major here at Slippery Rock University. And on the screen is my email and phone number if you have any extra questions.
Thank you. Questions? Okay. Now we're moving to the fatal flaw, OSHA's stagnation with workplace fatality reduction by Mark CFO from IUP. Mark, is Mark here? I think Mark is not here. We'll move to Olivia Marcus and Samantha Graham from Slippery Rock with their topic safety on cosmetics, makeup, and stuffs.
Hello, my name is Olivia Marcos and this is Samantha Graham. We're undergraduate students at Slippery Rock University. Our safety research project is on safety in costumes, makeup, and stunts. So our research questions are, what are the hazards associated with special effects makeup on actors' skin in the movie industry? And how do the hazards of special effects impact actors' physical health? We hope to gain more knowledge and understanding of what actors are put through and why there are so many injuries and illnesses and fatalities while filming these movies.
For our literature review and theory, we found that there's a lack of knowledge of safety in the film industry, several fatalities, injuries, and illnesses that have occurred on sets of movies as well. So we still want to know, why isn't there more research on safety in the film? Why isn't it talked about more, and why do they keep reoccurring? And will safety in the film industry be taken more seriously? In a recent BECTU freelance survey, only 46% of contracts had risk assessments. Of these, 37% were not communicated to members. Hence, 63% of freelancers still do not have the protection of risk assessments.
So for our methods and data collection, we plan to use interviews and surveys, interviewing people that work in the film industry. And we plan to reach out to these professionals by asking them how they feel about safety in their career in the film industry. And we hope to do this within the next 6 months, if possible.
So thank you for having us. And as you can see, there's many things that can go wrong in the film industry that go unnoticed. And safety in film needs to be taken more seriously. We listed our contact information. If you have any questions, we're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Samantha. Great job. Great topic, actually. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Now we move to the impact of coronavirus pandemic and remote work on health and safety professional well-being and work dynamics. A perception analysis by Christian and Melanie from IUP.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So for many jobs, companies require workers to be physically present in the workplace. However, due to the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, like social distancing measures and stay-at-home orders, many are forced to work from home when possible. And this has had a huge impact on the way work is performed. So Christina and I are investigating the impact this global shift to remote work has had on health and safety professionals' well-being and work dynamics. Although teleworking is not a new concept, the pandemic response resulted in a monumentous increase of people working from home. So approximately 1 in 4 employed workers teleworked or worked from home during the COVID-19 pandemic. Even when stay-at-home orders were relaxed, many workers continued to work fully or partially from home. And hence, we have moved away from a predominantly face-to-face interaction to virtual meetings and web chats. The ability to telework varies by occupation. However, due to Christine and I both being in the health and safety industry for some years, we chose to focus on the health and safety professionals with at least 1 year experience and who has worked across the pandemic from 2020 to present. Our literature review confirmed our thoughts that health and safety programs are typically designed around in-person interactions. So with this massive shift to remote work, it makes sense that we now have to revise how we continue to cover our job responsibilities. There's also inconsistent results from our lit review as to how remote work has actually affected workers' well-being, work management, and productivity, which has made the topic even more interesting to us. The intent of our research is to look at the perceptions held by health and safety workers about their jobs before and after the global shift to remote work and the challenges associated with it.
So these are our research questions. For the study, we're focusing on evaluating if there was any impact between remote work and the pandemic on health and safety management, the quality of life of health and safety professionals, and whether these factors impacted and shifted the job responsibilities for health and safety professionals. So for our methodology, our population, as we mentioned, is for health and safety professionals. We didn't place any restrictions on demographic, industry, gender, just so we can get a full scope picture of health and safety professionals in general and any of the impacts and challenges they may have seen. In addition to a literature review, we did a 57 question Qualtrics survey, with our main focus being perceptions before and during the pandemic. We are still in the data collection phase, so we're utilizing social media platforms to get health and safety professionals within our network to respond. And once we get into the data analysis, we'll be performing categorical analysis of our open-ended responses and then looking at trends between pre and post to see if there's statistical difference between those perceptions. So we started digging into some of our participants' results. And on this slide, you can see that we have a pretty broad spectrum of participants. So between industry and gender, we have a wide variety of participants. We hope to continue to see that expand just so we can continue to get a broader participant pool for our research. So digging into some of the trends that we're seeing. Prior to the pandemic and during the pandemic, work-life balance was considered the top job factor for the participants in our survey. Where we did see a shift, interestingly, is prior to the pandemic, remote work was seen as a least important job factor for over half of our participants. This shifted to commute time being the least important job factor, most likely due to the fact that there was also a shift in the percentage of safety and health professionals who were able to work in a hybrid capacity. So when evaluating our open-ended responses for the challenges health and safety professionals had from the COVID-19 pandemic, both during and prior to workload management and the management of overall safety and health programs was consistent. Where we saw some interesting changes was prior to the pandemic, many of our participants felt that management buy-in and support was a big challenge. What turned into a challenge during the COVID-19 pandemic was the visibility of health and safety in general created policy issues. The visibility increased that workload tenfold, and it caused some conflicts in managing COVID policies and the actual employer health and safety policies. Then when we started looking at our open-ended responses for how remote work may have impacted health and safety professional management, we saw a match in our literature review where there were both positive and negative perceptions on what remote work did for health and safety professionals. The commonalities were commute work was a positive, the commute reduction. Where it started getting negatively perceived was when we started seeing conflicts on that work-life balance piece. And one of the biggest drivers that we saw across our participants was communication and how to implement safety and health programs. So things like safety inspections became virtually impossible if they were forced into a more remote role. And these are just our references.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Melanie. Any questions? Okay, then we have Jason Harding from IUP. No? Okay. Then we move. Colleen. Is Colleen around? We're missing some people here. I mean, Colleen, her topic is about challenges for low-wage residential healthcare workers amid COVID-19. And then we move to log out, tag out in the robotics industry by Ryder, Rust, and Christian Woodside.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for letting us have this opportunity of presenting to you guys.
like I said, like she said, we're doing lockout tagout and the importance of it in the robotics industry. So for a little bit of an introduction, my name is Christian Woodside. I am a senior safety management major here at Slippery Rock, and this is my partner, Ryder Rust.
I'm a sophomore.
Yeah, and our research is basically evaluating the importance of lockout tagout and robotics in the industry. So these are the research questions that we propose for you. The first one is, how has the use of robotics in the manufacturing industry decreased lockout tagout injuries? And going off of that that's our main question. But going off of that is it cost effective for major producers to use robotics as opposed to human work? And then we wanted to include this chart for you guys. It's just showing within the past couple of years how many robots are being installed worldwide. So you can see that there's hundreds of thousands of robots being installed. So then it's the future. They're not going to be going anywhere. And this was obtained from the International Federation of Robotics.
Some of the benefits of robotics is saving employees time. It's also financially rewarding to have robotics. And then it also improves their product quality, consistency. It prevents injuries of employees, and it saves employees from dangerous tasks. But this is only if that the proper training is conducted to all employees. Every employee can recognize precursors associated with the operation. Everyone has been trained in proper lockout tagout procedures. Every employee knows the consequence of using these machines, and control measures are in place. And then where we found our research and information, we looked at case studies from OSHA. We also looked at case studies from NIOSH, and we used different data from different sources. But these case studies, along with data information from the International Federation of Robotics, is what we used for our research. But then in conclusion, robots have a ton of benefits for all our employees and our procedures. So with the growing use of technology and robotics in the workplace, it's important to know that our employees know the lockout tagout procedures and to ensure the injuries are non-existent in the workplace.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
Yep, sorry. Thank you both. Very interesting topic. Okay, so the last one is going to be a case study characterization of occupational injury in the steel industry by Adam K. Kribel, and he's from IUP. He couldn't be there, but he recorded his presentation for us.
Hey everyone, how's it going? My name's Adam Kriebel from IUP. I'll be graduating in just a few months, and I'll be taking you through my my capstone project here. It's characterization of. So the purpose here, pretty straightforward. What I did was I used company data as a case study to identify if the implementation of one of the leading indicators that we use on a day-to-day basis, as well as our big hand safety initiative, was successful in reducing total injuries, so injuries as a whole, as well as injuries in specific. 40% of all of our injuries over the past 5 years have come from hands or hand injuries. So certainly looking to reduce those. One of our biggest challenges. So I won't highlight all these, just like to highlight two of them. So the steel industry reports in its various industry sectors, reports TCIRs between 2.1 and 8.4, national average being 2.9. So substantially elevated, definitely plenty of work to do there, plenty of ground to make up. The final bullet here, so, you know, every fix that we have as safety and health professionals, it can't be one that breaks the bank, right? We don't have endless pots of money. You know, that's the truth of the matter. We don't have endless budgets to employ massive engineering fixes to totally absolve our workplaces of risk, right? So what we need is a smart workforce. We need to build a culture where employees, production departments are identifying risk on a day-to-day basis and mitigating that risk by themselves as well. So 2 research questions here. First one that I had alluded to earlier is one of our leading indicators that we use that has been implemented. Has this been one of the key drivers in driving down our injury totals? And second, has the implementation of our hand safety initiative been successful in reducing our hand injury totals? And again, what is the hand safety initiative? I'll explain that a little bit later as well. So for methodology, I'll be very brief here. What I did was I used data mining. We have a software program we use. It's called GenSuite Incident Manager. I extracted data from here for bodily injury locations. So where are we getting injured the most? Injury totals and year over year, over a 5-year period from 2017 to 2021. And additionally, I extracted some stop card totals, hand safe action data, different things like that, that I'll get to in a couple slides. So let's give you some background quick of our injury totals and TCIR. So our safety performance over the past 5 years, 2017 to 2021. As you'll see on the left here, our injury totals have substantially decreased from 46 recordable injuries all the way down to 20. This is a 57% reduction, and then TCIR reflects the same message as well, from 1.76 to 0.98 in the previous fiscal year. So we see this large reduction in TCIR and injury totals as well. So what is the key driver here? To me, it's our stop card program that we had implemented back in 2018. Over that 4-year period, as I previously mentioned, we saw a 50% reduction in our injury total. Stop cards is the stop card program is the leading indicator that I had mentioned before, and this is really the key driver in reducing our injuries. So what is a stop card? Well, it's not only the right, but it's also the expectation that our employees will stop when they encounter the following circumstances. So a gut feeling that something is unsafe with the task they're doing or the environment around them. They observe an unsafe condition. They don't have a process or procedure for the task that they're trying to complete, aka they don't know how to do it safely, or they're following a process or procedure and they lose track or miss a step. You'll see this on the next slide. So how do we get closure here? How do we close out a stop card? Really, it's pretty simple. It's when the situation has been resolved and a safe workflow has been restored. So I'll provide an example here. A maintenance employee was in the process of locking out a piece of equipment, and he noticed that the procedural steps did not match up to how the equipment currently stood. So there had been modifications to the equipment, thus affecting his lockout. It did not match up with the procedure, and he knew he could not proceed safely. So what he did was he got his supervisor. They addressed the situation. Obviously, he stopped. He didn't proceed any further because he did not have the correct procedure to perform his lockout. So what did they do? They rewrote the procedure to match the current state of the equipment, and he proceeded with his lockout after. So some of the data that I provided here through my data mining that I had mentioned earlier. So as I've said, stop cards were implemented in 2018. We saw a rise from 340 all the way up to 2,177. And this is in a fiscal year, so 340 in 2017, all the way up to 2,177 over that 4-year period. So incremental increase each year. This is a 540% increase over this time period, 2018 to 2021, at the same time, our injuries are reducing by 50%. And then additionally, on the right here, I tried to dartize this, if you will. The initial thought would be, well, maybe they had more labor hours. This is just why this number of stop cards is increasing. That's not the case when we put this into the DART formula. So basically, number of blank times 200,000 divided by your labor hours. Basically, it tells you how many stop cards per 100 employees working 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. So the second research question that I had mentioned was the implementation of our hand safety initiative. Injuries to the hands account for 40% of our injuries as a whole. So the thought being, if we can attack specifically hand safety and go after hazards that occur for our hands on a day-to-day basis, we can reduce this total as a whole. One of the key drivers to this hand safe program itself is a hand safe action. So what is a hand safe action? Safe action is a hazard that is identified, an actionable item, really. It's logged into our Gen Suite software, and the responsible department must find a resolution to improve the safety of this condition where a hazard was identified, and reduce the risk ultimately. So similar to stop cards, how do we close these out? So it's basically, a resolution or a layer of protection has been added or implemented to reduce the risk of the condition that was identified. And again, I'll provide an example. So just say it was identified that an employee must take a measurement of a glowing red hot bar. They have to use some calipers to do this. They bring them within 2-3 inches of the bar, current state. As we know, even with proper PPE, they're not invincible. Their hands could slip and they could potentially burn themselves. So that's the hand safe action. It's okay, solve this problem. The closure would be, as an example, the department implemented different longer calipers to create instead a 12 to 15 inch gap or distance from the red hot bar. It's not a complete fix, but it's a layer of protection, a solution to make our hands safer and minimize the risk of injury with our hands. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, we implemented hand safe actions to take on this monumental challenge of reducing our hand injury totals. Over this 5-year period from 2017 to 2021, we had 12 injuries, 16, 18, and then we dropped down to 6 and 7 hand injuries. As you'll see on the right-hand side, our hand safe actions, so where we are identifying hazards and mitigating the risk that those hazards present regarding our hands, we are identifying more and more each year. It took a couple of years to pick up steam, 2017, 2018, 2019, then finally 2020, 2021, we're seeing a very significant reduction in hand injuries. From 2017 to 2021, we saw 69 hand safe actions, 69 solutions, all the way up to 199 closed items. So this is 199 solutions to keep our hands safe. A 188% increase. Again, I did the same thing here on the right-hand side where I kind of dartized this metric. So it's not attributed to an increase in labor hours by any means. We are just identifying more hand safe actions per labor hours each year, so we can see a significant increase here. And I'm really interested to see how this progresses over the next several years. Our rate increased 259%. Hopefully that number continues to grow. But I believe unequivocally here we can say that stop cards and our hand safe program, particularly hand safe actions, have been attributed to a reduction in injuries as a whole, and hand injuries as well.
Okay, I think I see Jason Harding is there, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm gonna move to your.
Yeah, sorry for the confusion on my end there, Dr. Z.
No worries. I know emergencies could happen. Okay, so now we have the perceived impact on safety motivation related to hitch linked in oil and gas industry by Jason Harding from IUP.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Sorry, one thing. So for my study there, wanted to take a look at the perceived impact of safety motivation on oil and gas workers that were to work hitches. So for every 100 workers in the oil and gas field, there's 0.5 recordable injuries, illnesses, and fatalities. For those of you that are unaware, oil and gas workers typically work hitches that can range from 7 consecutive days to 28 consecutive days and anything in between there, really. And I've seen guys that work longer stretches that we've had impacts at my specific company where we've seen the guys that work longer hitches. We've seen lapse in judgments and injuries and spills and related things that have occurred, incidents that we've wondered the question, has that impact had anything to do with it? So previous studies have shown that fatigue levels rise as you would work more consecutive days as you get further into that stretch. And safety motivation that we wanted to take a look at is defined as the willingness of an individual to exert effort to enact safety behaviors. We also wanted to take a look at locus of control. For those of you that are unaware, that's one of the, there's internal and external, and it's how an individual perceives the causes in their life. So internal locus of control oriented people believe that they control the circumstances and anything that they put forth in their effort helps improve their situation. Whereas external locus of control individuals, they believe that everything happens due to fate or luck, and it's just a circumstance outside of their control. So our research questions here were, does the length of a worker's hitch impact their perceived safety motivation? Does a rotating shift work of the hitch also impact their perceived safety motivation? And then where does locus of control impact their safety motivation as well? Our method was that we devised a survey that would take approximately 10 to 15 minutes. We posted that on LinkedIn. We were looking for only oil and gas employees that worked hitch rotations, a minimum of 18 years of age. So far, our preliminary results yielded that all of our participants were a minimum of 8 years in the oil and gas industry. 85% of the participants worked 14-day hitches on average. There were some longer, some a little bit less, and all of them worked 12-hour shifts, which is very common in the industry. The perception of the safety culture, which was a section of the survey, all were extremely high. That would kind of surprise us the most, that everybody's safety culture of the company that they worked at were extremely off the charts, really. And then all the workers that were participants were also satisfied with the number of days that are currently in their hitch. So one of the questions that we asked was, how motivated are you to correct safety hazards the 5th day of your hitch? We also asked that same question about the 10th day of your hitch and the 14th day of your hitch. And they were all the same across the initial responses, that all of them were always motivated to complete that. This was somewhat contradictory to the previous slide. As my shift progresses, I am less likely to correct a safety hazard. There was more strongly agrees than there were others, which again, if they were always motivated to work the same on their 5th day, 10th day, or 14th day, this would be contradicting their previous statement. And then lastly here, we wanted to again talk about the locus of control. All of the individuals that participated through this were given options of A or B, and then we compared the results at the end. And they all showed that they had an internal locus of control orientation, which again shows that they are in charge of their own path. They believe that they control their destiny by their own actions. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Any questions for Jason? And I believe we have Colleen Craney just joined. Colleen.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Z. My name is Colleen Craney. I'm going to be discussing the challenges for low-wage residential healthcare workers amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The first thing I wanted to share was the slide here that really illustrates the significance of the problem of work-related injuries for nursing assistants and other healthcare workers. When you compare them to, for instance, maintenance and repair workers, it looks like there is about a 5 times increase on the amount, the rate of lost work days when you compare maintenance repair workers to nursing assistants. So that's why I decided to hone in on nursing assistants and low-wage healthcare workers to really understand the issues that they face in the workplace and some of their struggles at work. So the background and significance of this came from the COVID pandemic, which arose 2 years ago in the United States. Nursing assistants, as I mentioned before from that previous slide, had an incident of lost work days that was 5 times higher than general maintenance and repair workers. Over the first 18 months of the pandemic, more than 400,000 residential healthcare worker positions were lost. There is an anticipated need for an additional 1 million low-wage healthcare worker positions than what is currently employed over the next 5 years. And during the pandemic, the average 500-bed hospital added $17 million of additional labor costs to their workforce during the pandemic. So it's not necessarily an issue of increasing pay or investing money. This really needs to be an issue that is holistically approached in order to maintain the workforce in the low-wage healthcare industry. This image here just exemplifies the issue among healthcare workers and the jobs lost during the pandemic. The red line that you see there at the bottom are nursing positions in residential healthcare settings. When you compare them to ambulatory care and hospital jobs, which remained relatively steady, returning to within 2% of the employment rate at the pre-pandemic peak, you can see that residential healthcare setting employees have the much largest drop-off of employment compared to the other ones. So the study objectives here is really to identify the most pressing issues facing low-wage healthcare workers in the residential healthcare settings. Some ideas that we thought might be the largest issues included patient and biohazard safety, especially coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. On-the-job injuries, musculoskeletal disorders were very common amongst nursing assistants who are often in charge of moving, rotating very heavy patients. Hours or scheduling or specific impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the problem statement that we generated for this report was to characterize the challenges for low-wage healthcare workers in residential care facilities, particularly those issues arising from the COVID-19 pandemic, safety in the workplace, non-traditional work arrangements, and work-life balance. This data is going to be used to illustrate the impacts on staffing shortages in the field and provide recommendations to the residential healthcare facilities to mitigate these issues. Let's see the methodology here. Our participant pool, are adults working in the medical care of patients making less than $20 an hour who were employed during the COVID-19 pandemic in a residential healthcare setting. We modified the NIOSH WellBQ survey, to include less than 30 questions, which evaluated the 5 fields that you see there: work evaluation and experience, workplace policies and culture, workplace physical environment, health status, home, community, and society. We distributed this survey via social media and are hoping for about 100 responses. So as you can see, there are expectations. Our goal is 100 responses. We'll be doing inferential and statistical analysis in order to highlight the needs and areas of the most need to retain safely low-wage healthcare workers in residential healthcare settings. And there are some links. Thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Colleen. Any
you.
questions? I believe we have Mark already had an issue with logging in. Are you there, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. We have 5 minutes exactly. Did I pass yours over there? Okay.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Chufo. My research is entitled Fatal Flaw, and it explores OSHA stagnation with workplace fatality reduction. If we take a look at the chart on the next page here, we all know OSHA's role in reducing incidents and injuries at workplace since its inception in the 70s. But if you take a look at the data from the last 10 years, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the hovering of around 5,000 fatalities in the workplace. So from 2010 to 2019, it stayed right around 5,000. And our data is going to focus on 2017 to 2019 and take that small set out of there. And we're going to not examine the data from 2020, just as some impacts from COVID. But one of the things that we're really curious about is the workplace size. So if you take a look at these charts here, the last time the size of the workplace in relation correlated to fatalities has been explored was a Kaufman-Rand study in 2006. And the chart on the left shows some figures. If your workplace is smaller than 20 employees, you're 2 to 3 times more likely, depending on sector, to have a fatality. So the incidents are much higher. And you can kind of see the progression there. In general, the smaller the workplace, the more likely you have a fatality. So what we hope to achieve with this is our specific things is to see how the business metrics impact this fatality rate. So revenue growth, employee revenue ratio, and the number of employees growing the company. So if a company has experienced a rapid growth 4 times, 2 to 4 times revenue, how will that affect their safety, and how will that affect their fatality rates? Employee to revenue ratio, if they're running at a shoestring budget or they have a lot of surplus, will that affect this? And number of employees growing, if they doubled in size in under a year, will that impact their fatalities? Some of the other things we hope to achieve in this is if a group isn't fined, do they see any impetus or need for change, right? Stuff that not being fined have an impact on their outlook of their company safety. And then just in terms of budget and what size should a company have a full-time safety? We want to get an idea of what businesses at different sizes view the role of safety in their unique situation. Lastly, if they were a contract role, so if they are contracted to others, or if they acted as a contractor to, other big companies, host companies. The methodology consists of 2 parts. We're going to do a quantitative study of the fatality versus business data by scraping all of the fatality data, along with the incident and the case rate. So I'm sure everybody's familiar with the fatality charts on BLS. I'm going to correlate and collect all of the data, as well as the fines and the amount of fine with the other fatality information, some case information, and compare it to the business data. We're going to eliminate any groups that are governed by other bodies, such as airline and rail, and we're not going to focus on transportation, so vehicle-to-vehicle accidents. The other thing is going to be a perception survey. So, small businesses experience fatalities. Did the fine or lack of fine or the amount affect their perception on OSHA? Were they a contractor and have they ever been audited? And lastly, their perception of cooperative programs. Would they ever reach out to VPP or do a voluntary workplace audit? Last chart here, it's interesting to look at, the type of this data, right? Does the punishment match the crime in some of these cases? So when you look at this and, how low these fines are for fatalities, it makes you wonder what's the intent, what's they hoping to achieve. I just have a quote to end by Todd Conklin, just a way to look at it. The bigger, more complicated the safety management issue, it just seems that you can't both discipline away the safety problems and improve the performance. So to get rid of this plateau, how can maybe a more a different approach to this from OSHA affect this, and hoping to give this data to help drive that. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, any questions for Mark or any other student research? Okay, I want to thank all our students from Slippery Rock and Indiana University of Pennsylvania for their interesting and amazing research topic. And I want to thank all the attendees for being here. Thank you, everyone. Please, there's like 10 minutes transition to the next sessions. And
thank you. I was just going to say the only messages in the chat were very positive. So thank you for your support. And we had some private messages. So We'll see you in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining. Like they said, the virtual exhibition with our sponsors and vendors is from 10:55 to 11:40, and then at 11:40 we have a special session speaker. So I encourage you all to listen to that. And then we'll have lunch, and then our next speakers will speak again at 12:45. So again, thank you to everyone. We really appreciate your time and effort today.